Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Sun just went down, and we're going to expose the reality and the truth about Mrs. Mamdani and American politics. What is the hidden truth about the potential next mayor of New York City and the toxic American politics and American media that feeds the flames, that feeds the toxicity, right? Can't have toxic politics in America without toxic media to feed that politics, right? So, when Donald Trump came out, he got a lot of support from right-wing media. Now, initially, people know how much of a fraud he is. Right-wing media folks knew how much of a fraud he was, right? So some of them went after him and called him out and told the truth. But then they saw how many views people were getting and how much attention the fan base. So then they all flipped 180 and pretended to like Donald Trump, right? And then what did you have? You had the biggest mainstream media outlet, Fox News, propping up Donald Trump. And then you had all these right-wing channels propping up Donald Trump, right? Who had a problem with Donald Trump? Political opponents, of course. Democrats, liberals, folks on the left. Those are the ones who had an issue with Donald Trump. So you had the right-wing establishment propping him up, and you had the left-wing, or more like liberal establishment, going against him, right? Seems pretty simple, right? Then we have this new guy, Mr. Mamdani, right? Do you notice? I want you to pay close attention, right? Those of you guys that don't understand how American politics works, you might not notice this important detail, and that is that who has a problem with Mamdani? The right-wing and left-wing establishment. What did I tell you guys before? And just before anybody makes a suggestion, this is not a propaganda channel. I don't prop up politicians. I don't give a rat's ass about what you think about Mamdani. Maybe he's the one or whatever. This is not about that. I don't know much about the guy. For all I know, he could be a fraud. Maybe he's just really slick with it, right? But I'm going to speak the truth about American politics, right? So it's irrelevant whether, my opinions about him, right? That's irrelevant. The point is, whenever you have both sides of the establishment going after a candidate, then you know that there's at least a good chance this candidate might actually be good for the people, right? The establishment wants control, right? Not to get into like conspiracy theories. It's not even really a conspiracy theory. It's just greed, man. It's just power. And the way they maintain power is by keeping us under their boot, right? So they want players that are in the game, that are in that game of keeping us under the boot of the government and establishment, right? Anybody who would be a challenge to that system is a threat, right? So, forget about Mamdani. If we actually had a good candidate that came out that really was for the people, this is exactly what it would look like. You would have the establishment on both sides attacking that person. That's almost a guarantee. If you are not part of the machine, you are a threat to the machine. And the machine will come after you, and they will try to destroy you. And that is exactly what we see happening to Mamdani, which means one of two things is possible. He's actually a legit guy who is going to work for the people, and that's his intention. And therefore, our crooked politicians and establishment are afraid, and that's why they're attacking him. Or he is so clever. He is so clever beyond anything we've ever seen before. And he's so clever that the machine doesn't even recognize part of their system. They don't recognize that he's down with them. He's down with basically that quest of power, and he's all about himself. But he's extremely intelligent, and he's actually managing to pull it off to the point where the machine doesn't recognize one of their own people. So the machine is going after him, not realizing, hey man, he's one of ours. Now, I don't know which one of these is the answer, but it is more likely that he's actually the real deal than that he's some super clever whatever, right? Take note, this is the way American politics works, right? Think about the folks in the right-wing media, right? What message do they put out? Pretty much exactly what the establishment wants. In general, from what right-wing media is saying versus what Trump is saying and his team. You're going to have a hard time, right? Whatever Trump is pushing for, they are cheerleading for, right? They are the establishment. Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan, right? The list goes on and on. Steven Crowder. They are there to keep the people in power by distracting the people with nonsense, right? Fear-mongering and hate and anger and, oh, the liberals and the socialists and whatever, right? That's their job. What are they doing right now? Think about the fact that you have these disgusting, despicable, traitorous right-wingers who operate to serve the power, the people in power against we the people that made these people millionaires. They are betraying them for their own wealth. And who are they agreeing with right now? The establishment liberal media and the establishment liberal party, the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is afraid of Mamdani, right? Think about that. Ben Shapiro and the Democratic establishment are on the same page, and they're all angry about Mamdani. Think about the fact that people in red states are angry about the mayor of some blue city. Think about, if you're a liberal, you're a leftist, think about this for a second. Imagine that there was some radical right-winger who was running for mayor in a deep red state. Can you imagine you getting all bent out of shape to the point where it's profitable for left-wingers to make videos talking about, oh my goodness, this deep red state has some radical right-wing guy that's running for mayor. Like, who gives a fuck? If you're a left-winger, you're probably in a blue state, a blue area. Why would you give a damn about who the fuck they want to elect in a red state? But yet, the big story right now, Fox News, Ben Shapiro, all these guys, oh, he's a socialist, he's a communist. They're all going after him, along with the establishment Democratic Party. Think about that for a second. Ben Shapiro has been telling us for years how bad the liberals are, right? How bad the Democratic Party is, right? Meanwhile, he is on the same page with them attacking this guy, Mamdani. Why would that be? Right? What has he done? Has he done something? It's not like he did something and there was some kind of scandal or whatever, but they're sitting there and they're not even being honest, right? They can't even, it is so transparent. Ben Shapiro can't even just attack him on reality. He has to call him a communist, right? So he has to go and pretend that he is something that he's not. So that means that Mamdani, the truth about him, is not bad enough. That Ben Shapiro has to make shit up, right? So that's to tell you what's really going on, right? And like I said, if there was a good candidate for the people, this is exactly what it would look like. The establishment would be so afraid and they would go after him. And that is what we see happening right now, right? And why do you think that is? I want you to understand something else, right? If you're a right-winger, know that you've been lied to about many things, but one of the things you've been lied to about is the Democrats are socialists and they're radical left or whatever. Bullshit. The Democratic Party might as well be a conservative party, right? By rhetoric and whatever games that are being played, yeah, it might seem that way, that they're radical or whatever, but these guys like Ben Shapiro, the same way he's calling Mamdani a democratic socialist, and think about it, democratic socialist is scary enough of a name. If you're a conservative, you've been trained for decades that socialism is evil and it's going to destroy the world. So he could just simply call him what he is and say, this democratic socialist guy. If he wants to be a little bit dishonest, he could just drop the Democrat and just say socialist guy. But he had to call him a communist, right? Whenever you see them doing stuff like that, that's how you know that the person is definitely not what they're presenting. Because if he was really that bad, Ben Shapiro would be telling you the truth about him and not calling him names and smearing him and pretending he is something that he's not, right? Democratic socialism should be bad enough based on the conservative ideology, but apparently not, right? Think about why that is. But I want you to understand something else. There's another dynamic you have to understand. So why would the Republican Party have a concern about some random mayor in New York? I'll tell you why. The Democratic Party is a fraud. They pretend to be this opponent of the Republican Party and we are liberal values, but they're really capitalists and they're very conservative in reality, right? So what does that mean? They get to play like they're progressives and say progressive words, get progressive people to vote for them, and then they rule like conservatives. I know you don't see it that way, but the reality is the things that progressives want, Democrats are not even coming close, right? The things that progressives want, the things that the left wants, the Democratic Party is not even coming close, right? So here's the deal. Because they're not actually delivering on the things that the left wants, right? That leaves a lot of people left behind and disappointed with the Democratic Party. And that's the way the Republican Party wants it. If you are actually serious about the talk that the Democratic Party likes to talk about, if you're actually serious, you are a problem. Because what that means is, this guy Mamdani, I don't know anything about this guy, right? I got no dog in this race. He's a stranger to me. I don't give a fuck about the guy more than I would about anybody else, right? But here's the reality. If he actually is the real deal and delivers on the progressive policies that the Democratic Party pretends to care about, he can make a lot of people's lives much better. He can make New York City much better. And that's a problem, right? The Republican Party, what you want is the Democrats to continue to pretend to be progressive and then rule like conservatives and then leave their base disappointed, right? That is how the Republican Party can win. But if you have somebody who's actually serious, who's actually delivering, that's a big problem. You can demonstrate that there is a better way. There is a better way where people's lives can be improved, right? And if all you have is hate and fear mongering and, oh, socialism, it's really hard for that to work because there's conservatives who live in New York City. And if those conservatives in New York City feel like their lives are better when somebody actually delivers, that's a very big problem, right? So the more legit that you seem, the more a threat you are to the Republican Party and the right-wing establishment. But that also includes the Democratic Party establishment as well. So I want you to stop and think for a second. I'm going to end this live stream now. But ask yourself, why is the Democratic Party establishment and the Republican Party establishment and the right-wing media all on the same page that this guy is a problem? What do you think is behind that? Just think about that for a second. Stop letting people gas you up and tell you a bunch of nonsense. Actually think critically for a second. The Democratic Party establishment, the Republican Party establishment, and the right-wing media are all ganging up on this one guy. Why? You answer that question. Once you answer that question, you will figure out a lot about American politics. This is the Baby Channel. Debate in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell.